Welcome to the podcast, Gerald. It's such a pleasure to talk to you today. And I know that you have been a long-term entrepreneur and you're building products for the last 20 years. You started building within Web1 and now you're building within Web3. And while I was doing research prior to the podcast, I know that you got into the Web3 space because you got involved with NFTs and particularly selling the NFT of one of the main actors, Money Case.
Yes.
But could you just tell me a bit more about this journey of how did you realize the full potential of Web3?
So I think the first time I got into contact with the space was 2018 or something. It was actually on an event. There was a guy with gold suit shooting dollars out of a money pistol and talking about Bitcoin. I thought, wow, this is crazy. This is not going to work, unfortunately, because I should have entered actually then. So it took me another 2.5 years or something, and I had started to invest actually by that a little bit into Web3, and then. There was one business where basically they asked me to be an advisor, how to build businesses, basically, because that's what I've been doing for a long period of time. And I entered that space, and I realized at one moment that that space is it's like a different planet, like a different universe, which the normal world doesn't really see because it's so abstract, basically. So the real kind of triggering effect, I think, was when I started to understand the space better, and then we did this NFT sell. And then within 60 seconds, essentially, for $1 million worth of money, basically, these NFTs were sold. And I couldn't believe it because I thought that was completely crazy, that this is just possible. And then I started to really understand that this whole world has a complete own dynamic of why it works and how it's functioning. And of course, the very interesting thing I believe in Web3 compared different to Web2 and Web1 is that Web3 has invented its own money. And that is, of course, completely different because once you have your own money, you have, like, again, a different universe where own rules apply. And that really fascinated me. And then starting to think about this was really clear that a lot of businesses will completely change, applying blockchain mindset and technology to it. And I wanted to be a part of it. That's why I said, okay, 100% focus on this. It's going to be a journey. We're still in the early stages, but there's a huge revolution coming on. So let's do this.
What's your opinion on NFTs? I know that it's not your area of expertise at the moment, but a lot of people argue that NFTs are dead. And I think that some of the use cases might not be as relevant as they used to be, but there is still a lot of utility and businesses can employ them to engage their communities. And we've seen that over and over again. And I had a chat with Zach, the co-founder of Mintable, and he was telling me how more and more companies are employing NFTs to engage their communities. So what's your take on it?
Yeah, so in these revolutions, let's say, or technology revolutions, there's always the same pattern, right? At the very beginning, you have the gold diggers, the people who are crazy, the people who are brave and just say, let's just go there. I mean, it's like a gold rush. Like, people went there because they just went. There was no reason, baby. And of course, these people have an own mindset and they want to get rich fast, and that's a logic of its own. It's a casino, it's gambling, but it's also needed because these people kind of are a driving force to really bring attention to something. And look at it this way, NFTs 2.5, 3 years ago, all of a sudden the whole world was speaking about NFTs. I think it was the first time really when people understood, oh, okay, now I understand that there's a real use case of what you can do with the blockchain, right? And the technology, of course, is, well, you just mint an NFT and you own it, and then it's for trade and it's yours, basically. But then if you look at it from an abstract way, I think there's probably two ways of how to look at NFTs. The one is the casino way, and I think that's fine. It works for a while. It's always the same thing, right? Now it's the meme coins, it's always the next wave, and that's fine because eventually people want to make money with it, and then it draws attention to it. That's great. But the NFT itself actually has, I think, a very interesting use case, same as token, basically. And I look at it as either a membership pass, you can basically argue, or it's a receipt, you can also say, right? Because it's a unique identity or a unique receipt, let's say, on the internet, which proves that I've bought, for example, this piece of art or this piece of a bottle of wine or whatever. And then basically you connect the digital piece with the physical piece and say, okay, this is one unity specifically for luxury items and so on. Makes so much sense. Breitling, I mean, they're, I think, giving out for every watch they're now selling, they're giving out an NFT certificate of authenticity and so on, which can't be falsified. So I think there's a lot of use cases why you actually want to have this as a receipt, let's call it this way. And then the other one is, I think, access to membership and communities and privileges. Again, I mean, these things have been around for a long period of time. The huge difference now is it's a tradable membership piece, and I can basically really attach value and smartness, let's say, to it, unlocking features and so on. Very often, I think, in revolutionary steps, let's say, it is something what already existed before. You apply new technology to it. There's different rules then applying to this technology, and then you can all of a sudden open up new use cases, and then one day it will become mainstream. And I'm 100% sure that something like NFTs, whatever you want to call it in the future, a digital receipt or whatever, will be there for the long term and will be a standard thing what every business eventually will issue.
Yeah, I definitely agree with it. So do you believe that the existing collections like Bored Ape and the rest of them would recover? Because most of them are between 70 to 90% down. And do you think that they will recover? And I don't think they will happen in this bull market, but potentially in the next bull market, we'll see a lot of traction around NFTs again. This narrative will reemerge. But I'm wondering whether it will be the same collections or some new collections will come. I guess it will be a mixture of both. But I'm wondering, like, do you think that all these people that put money into NFTs just essentially lost 90%, 89% of their value if they don't really like the NFT?
Yeah. So I think there it probably makes sense to draw a connection to the art world, because I think that's what really is. If you think about Bored Ape, for example, a lot of other NFTs, you can really look at it as art. And the art scene, I actually, my father has been an art dealer, so I know a bit about it, is a very similar logic, actually, right? So if you have 100 artists, 98 or 97 or whatever will not make it, and they will never become relevant and be huge successes and so on. There might be peaks and so on, but it's really very, very few artists eventually who are relevant and who draw a lot of attention, and then actually prices go up. And that's why everybody knows Banksy and Warhol and so on. But I mean, there's thousands, millions of artists out there. Nobody knows. And I think that's the same rule which applies going to be applied here in the NFT world. There's going to be millions and thousands where NFTs basically are not worth anything because there's not really something behind it, or there's a certain logic why people just not going to buy it. But then I believe things like Bored Ape, for example, I think they have a unique piece in history, you could even argue, because it started a trend, right? So there's a couple of these, I believe, which definitely will have long-term value. And the moment we're going to see, and I'm not sure if it's already happened or not, but where museums are going to put these into their collections and so on. And then it's just a different mindset. So I believe these actually very often will have value. To your point of have lost money, I think it's very dangerous in this world to speak about win money and lose money, kind of, because it's all very artificial, right? Let's be honest. A lot of people poured a bit of money into this industry, being it 500, 1,000, 5,000, whatever the basically is, whatever they could afford. Hopefully not too much, because eventually we don't really know where it's going to. And then they won, right? Because they invested the right meme coin at the right moment, they were invested in the right NFT, and then it's all millionaires on papers, and it's all virtual money, which is essentially what you have. But it's not real money. So when you lose this not real money, you don't really lose anything, because you in the first place didn't have anything. So I'm always a bit cautious on these things. Well, I've lost all my money. Well, by the way, you didn't have the money in the first place. If you put your original $5,000 into it, true, that could be the case, but all this upside was virtual anyways.
The unrealized capital, but the unrealized gains. But I was thinking of the people that actually bought at the top.
Yeah.
Because they invested like their fiat buying the NFT, and now the value of the NFT declines so much. But I
Yeah.
guess topic for another conversation. We're not even supposed to talk about
Yeah.
NFTs because it's such a hated topic. So I try to stay away from it. But
I think
I
it's
enjoy
super
talking
interesting.
about it.
I think it's super interesting. It's going to come back in a different format. We're going to be surprised about what people are going to do with it. I think it's super interesting. It's an
Yeah,
experiment, anyways, what we're all doing. I think people have to be aware of it.
yeah. I completely agree with it. So at the moment, you're building a new email system for the Ethereum community.
Mhm.
And in a previous interview, you are just talking about it and you are building a thesis that communication is in the middle of everything.
Mhm.
And we as human beings will always want to communicate. And you're aiming to resolve this problem with the company that you're building at the moment. So could you just tell me a bit more about the thought process behind it and the inception of the company?
Mhm. Yeah, so it literally also started with these NFT projects we were supporting, and in that process, so Shams, we have been friends and business partners for a long time, basically, and he's a technical genius. I say also a very good businessman, but I'm more the business side, let's say. So he at one point said, "Listen, I mean, the problem always is this: you create a community, then people enter your Discord, your Telegram, you sell the token NFT or whatever, and then people, there's a lot of noise in there, right? So a lot of people are then, yeah, what is this? And scam, it doesn't work, and you don't know anymore as a user what's relevant, what's not relevant. What happens is I leave the group because it's just too much. It's just too much noise for me, and I leave the group on Discord, I leave the group on Telegram, and then basically that's it, because the token issuer has no way normally anymore to contact with me, unless perhaps I've given him my email in the first place. Then they could potentially do it. But then if I've sold the token to you or the NFT to you, Ivan, well, they don't know you, right? So that's the end of the communication channel, basically. So Shan came up with the idea and say, well, listen, I mean, wallets are public repositories where you can see which asset somebody has, and if you think of an NFT or a token like a cookie, like a permission that you're allowed to talk to the person, then the wallet is the container which contains that allowance to talk to somebody. And if you connect that to an existing communication channel, which in our case, we chose email because it's the second biggest communication channel on earth after telephone, then all of a sudden you're building on an existing infrastructure a new communication layer. And by the way, on purpose, we didn't try to invent a new communication system. Like there's lots of these apps out there and the next Telegram and all these things. People underestimate how difficult it is to generate a real relevant communication channel, which is because eventually communication is always a marketplace, right? It's a sender and a receiver. So both people have to have it. So if you think about the last 10 years, even, or something, 15 years, even, which new communications channels came to life? What's Telegram, probably? It's WhatsApp. Discord, well, yeah and no, but it's super small compared to everything else. I think it's like whatever, a couple of 100 million users, right? So really, there's very few new communication channels which came into place and which people regularly use. So we said from the beginning, trying to establish a new channel from ground zero will be very, very difficult. So let's use something which is there, which everybody can use, and attach blockchain technologies to it. That's exactly what we did. So the logic is you can send an email from wallet to wallet, basically. The whole ecosystem is built, basically. So we have created all possible wallet addresses. They serve as a holding inbox, meaning that even if I would now send an email to your wallet and you aren't aware of EtherMail, then actually it would store the message. And then whatever, in 6 months or in 3 months, the first time you access the service, you actually have that email waiting for you. And again, it's important because it's a marketplace of communication, right? It's senders and receivers. They both have to have it. So that's where we have been starting to build. And then at the beginning, we had really the big luck that there was a lot of viral growth. So millions of people signed up, basically. And then that's the first wave. I think the Web3 people, and we're still growing by thousands of people every day. The second wave now for us is to enable Web2 people to enter into Web3. So essentially, you sign in with your Gmail. We create a wallet, a non-custodial wallet with you. For you, you also actually have the EtherMail, and your email serves as a wallet. And that's the second thesis, what we kind of have in our logic. So the first is a new communication channel to allow wallet-to-wallet communication. The second thesis is we believe that email can be a very good channel and enabler to onboard Web2 users, because for them, I think it's very often it's just too complicated. The pop-ups of the wallets, I sign cryptic transactions and so on. So it is something which I've seen also my wife or my daughter even. They are not super familiar. If you're not a technical person, it's a very big kind of a hurdle basically. So email has the big advantage that people know it already. So if you tell somebody, well, in the future you're going to sign transactions by receiving an email, and then in the email you say, yes, I approve this email. That's something what for them is a lot easier to understand than cryptic code. So for example, that's exactly what we built. Email is a wallet. You receive a smart contract to sign. We scan the smart contract also for malicious information and so on, and say, yes, this is a good smart contract. And then me as a user, I just sign in there, and then that's it. So that's the second piece is what we're working on. And then there's a third one. I'm not sure if you want to speak about it already, but that's basically the whole rewards and consensual marketing, rewarding users for their time.
Yeah, we will delve deeper into the third use case a little bit later, but I just want you to tell me a bit more about the anonymous communication between users. And I was reading your white paper and find it really interesting that you said anonymous communication must be possible, and you've written must with capital letter.
Yes.
And I really like that. So I know that you deploy XMTP. So could you just tell me a bit more about it? But also, yeah, before I ask my next question, could you just explain that?
So the anonymous communication, of course, relates to a communication between wallets, because wallets by definition are anonymous. And at the moment, wallets cannot communicate amongst each other. There's no real way. You could do it, and of course, that's where you're referring to. You could do it via XMTP, but there is some issues with XMTP essentially, because you will actually have it on different devices. Then you get actually everybody can spam you basically. So it's an open protocol again. I mean, we're not against it, and we also implemented it. But again, it has a certain use case, and other things probably are going to be difficult with it. It's just the way also how wallets operate, let's say. It's very simple, right? Take any plugin in your browser, you have this little small window up there. It's a very different experience than going into an app or into an email interface where you have a lot of different opportunities basically to communicate, and you can store and put folders and everything. It's not made for communication. It's made for payment approval basically, but it's not really made for communication. And XMTP is trying to be in that channel, which is fine. Again, there is a use case. That's also why we have implemented it. So if people in our logic try to choose XMTP communication via EtherMail, that's possible, but they can of course also use EtherMail as a communication channel.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying that for me. I thought that that's the only option that they can use, but that's not the case.
No, it's a normal email essentially, right? So I have it on my Apple email basically, and I get the emails on my Apple Mail. That's it.
Okay. And there are two ways to enter it. You can either do it through your browser extension, which like I've done it with my MetaMask personally,
right?
Or you can create a wallet through Gmail. Could you just tell me a bit more about the Gmail option? Because I'm just wondering about my seed phrase and the custody of it. How does it work? Are you the custodian? Could I recover it if I ever want to?
Yeah, good point. So we are non-custodial to start with this basically. When you log in with Gmail, you have two options. Option number one is I select that I already have a wallet, and I just include my wallet, and then it connects my wallet with my Gmail essentially. Or I select I don't have a wallet, and then we will create a non-custodial wallet for you and actually email you the seed phrase. So you actually will have it, and as an email basically in your inbox basically. And then of course it's really up to you to define what you want to do with it, because if you lose it, okay, then that's a kind of. There is a way where basically between 2 out of 3 keys you actually can get it. That's actually, to be honest, a very technical question. Shan would be the right person to answer this, but there is actually a way how you can recover it we can't recover it. So we don't know anything about the seed phrase or the wallet, but there is, for the user, there is actually a way. You can probably look at the website and there it would be described, but there is a way to back it up. But for sure, we are non-custodial. We are not a custodial wallet provider. It's not our job.
Yeah. And I know that you're also running the email-based academy. I'm not sure whether that's the right name, but essentially once people sign up with you, you want to educate them on the full potential of Web3. And I'm a massive proponent of it because we have to simplify the entire process. And that's exactly what you're doing. Yes. But then once they're within the Web3 space, we have to educate them. Otherwise, what's the difference between a Web2 and a Web3 company? And it, like the Web3 narrative and the idea that it's like self-sovereign, and then you have all full control of your data and all those amazing notions. But for us to fully realize them, or just the masses to fully realize them, they have to be educated on this. So could you tell me a bit more about this process and the entire initiative?
Yeah, so we are actually revamping this one at the moment, but it's exactly what you're saying. What we have seen is, I mean, it's an age thing, of course, also, right? But if I basically ask around in my peer group, 9 out of 10 people would tell me, "Oh wow, this Web3 blockchain, I really have to start digging into it, but I just don't understand it." Full stop. And then the conversation ends essentially. And with younger people, it's something similar. They're kind of aware that there is something, but again, it's like you're aware of Mars, but you don't know anything about Mars, okay? And you would be interested in it perhaps, but well, if I don't have the opportunity, I can't learn. That's exactly where we started. And again, we are revamping this now to actually target it really for the Web2 users, because of course the Web3 users, you could argue, yeah, they have a wallet and they should know about it. But then if you sign with your Gmail and it's really your first contact with the Web3 world, we're trying to educate it in small slices of what Web3 really is and where the use cases and what makes sense. And of course, I think we have to be also honest with ourselves. This Web3 world is still lacking a lot of real world use cases. We have a lot of DeFi and finance and discussions on tokens and buying and so on, but real world use cases are still limited compared to the whole industry. I always say a normal industry, or let's say the real world, has around 10% of the economy is around finance, okay? And 90% is real world production of goods and service and everything else, basically. Well, in Web3 or blockchain, it's the other way around. It's 90% finance. It's buying and selling of token. It's DeFi. It's staking. It's all these things. And 10% are, well, okay, there's the NFT token from Dolce Gabbana, for example, or there is the Stepin thing and so on. So that is the next challenge, that basically we have to move the needle away from just a finance phenomenon towards a real world phenomenon. And again, we are starting to see things step by step that the bigger corporations also start embarking on it, and they see what the potential is.
Okay, so you're talking about the real world problems. So could you help me understand what are the real world problems that you're aiming to solve? And I guess within this question, if you can explain the difference between the legacy email providers and EtherMail, because in my mind, you could essentially operate without the blockchain component. And I understand that there are benefits to deploying blockchain, but what exactly are you aiming to solve, just to bring you back to the original question?
Absolutely. So EtherMail essentially is, as you said correctly, not a Web3 native only blockchain project. It's really probably a Web 2.5 project, you could argue. So where do we use blockchain? That's great, because that means that we are the bridge. That's also exactly what we're going to be between 2 and 3, basically. So where do we use blockchain, and what's the difference what we make compared to a normal today email service? So it's very simple. Today, an email is a communication channel. That's what it is. Okay, it allows me to send an email from me to you. That's it. But that's it. There's no more to it, basically. So if you add Web3, and specifically, I mean, a wallet to it, you get the benefits of a wallet connected to a communication channel. And what are the benefits of a wallet? Number one, it's encryption. Number two is payment. And number three is identification also. So these three things all of a sudden can be connected to an email, which before wasn't really possible. And let's go through them, what it really means. Number one, encryption. So today, Gmail reads every email, right? Because they of course need to, because eventually that's the marketing and the advertisement model, that they use all the data can get on the user, accumulate it, and then put targeted advertisement on display and everything else. So we don't read any email. We don't know at all what's actually happening in the email. Everything is end-to-end encrypted. Number one. Number two, identification. So in our logic, the wallet basically is the anonymous identification key, basically, where I sign, and this is now me with my seed, because of course I have to have my seed phrase somewhere. So I can be sure that only me really can sign with this, unless I've given somebody my seed phrase. Of course, that would be stupid, because then I can't. So that is, I think, we at least for the moment, until AI is going to, quantum computing is going to catch up with it, foolproof. So that's the identity and access part. And then the third part is actually, and there's another part to the identification, I'm going to come to that in a second. The third part actually is payment. And that is something what we believe is actually a super interesting connection to email and connecting it actually to payment. How does today e-commerce and payment and communication work? And I've been in this for a long time. In this one business, we send 10 million emails every day, trying to convert from email into purchases and so on. So the funnel looks like this today. Let's assume I have a list of users, and I want to sell something to these users. The step previously, I have to first get those users. But let's assume I have, let's say, 10,000 people in my database and my email list. I want to sell something to you as a normal Web2 commerce today. So I'm sending email newsletters every week, every month, or whatever. I send this newsletter to you. It gets in your inbox, and then there's an offer, and it says, "Hey, Ivan, there's a great offer on 6 white shirts. Click here." Okay, so you click on the thing, you go to the website, then you have to log in probably, or you have to create a new account if you have an account. Then you have to go to the shopping basket, you put it in the shopping basket, you select your size, you go to the payment process, you pull out your credit card, you type in your number. You know what I'm getting, right? So it's a 10 to 12 process step. And funny enough, and I still don't know why this has not been solved, is still as of today, 20 to 30% of transactions at the end, for me also, don't go through, because the credit card wasn't accepted. I don't know, forgot my code in that moment. There's that stupid device where I don't have the password now. It's a 3-letter word encryption thing. I don't know, right? So I have forgotten my password to my PayPal. So very often at the end, actually, I can't even buy, or I'm actually in my bed, and then the SMS arrives in the phone below, and I have to go down. So very often, actually, all these things actually lead to just break-off rates. And probably, I don't know that these figures, but you can say probably if you have 100 people entering the funnel, only 20 to 30 really finish the funnel. So that's like 70% loss of people. And then you had 100 people who were even willing to buy something. So this is, in our opinion, long-term, the real core what email/Web3 email can change, because the funnel in our world in the future will look very different. I am going to send you a Web3 email. In that Web3 email, you're going to see that product, for example, the white shirts. And then there's 2 cases. Case number 1 is you've never bought with me before, or case number 2 is you have bought with me before. Let's take the you've never bought with me before. You would actually, in that email, you don't go on any website. You say, I want to buy those shirts. With that, click on the button on I want to buy those shirts. I give permission to the sender of the email, the e-commerce, that they can access in the future. Not now, but in the future. They allowed to access one time my NFT, which has stored my direction, where I live at the moment. Because at the moment, I don't know, I'm in Portugal on vacation, and I've updated my profile. That's where I want to get it now, basically. Number 2, it actually allows, for example, to get size. Yeah, because, well, I'm always wearing Excel. Well, I just give you the permission now to access that size, but you don't have to put it in. Number 3 is, well, preference of color could be, for example, well, I never wear white shirts. I always wear black shirts, for example. So I give all the permission. And then the last part, that's the fourth, is I give permission to take from my account $19.99. Because again, the wallet or the email is a wallet, right? I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to pay anything. The funds are in the wallet because I've uploaded my wallet with USDC, for example. So I go from a 12-step process of an e-commerce funnel to a 2-step process where I just say, okay, I want to buy this and that's it. Or imagine an invoice, okay? Now I get the invoice, I have to go to my bank, I have to upload the invoice, I have to put the things. In the future, I get the invoice, I say pay, and then that's it.
Mm.
There's a lot of things. If you combine a communication channel with a payment and identification channel, all of a sudden you can do a lot of things which today are silos. I have a communication silo, I have an identification silo, I have a payment silo. And the e-commerce kind of has to put it all together, and then the user is always frustrated because they're always going back to silos.
And how far away are we from this two-step process? How long do you think that it will take you to implement it?
Mm-hmm.
Or would you need to partner with other companies? Would you be able to do it on your own? Do you have all the required technology?
Yeah, so we can do it our own. It's a question of priorities, essentially. You see, if we would have Web2 companies who would understand this and would be willing to basically do it, we can basically do it in 3 to 6 months, essentially, right? So technologically wise, we are aware on how basically we can do. The challenge is that the Web2 world is very often not ready yet. Yeah, it's they have a challenge to overcome this into entering into this Web3 space. But we are getting there step by step. So I don't think it's like 5 years out. I think it's perhaps 6 to 18 months out potentially. But then the other part, which earlier actually can potentially be addressed, is the whole single sign-on and then basically onboard Web3 users. So for example, the single sign-on, what I've given you, this is something what in the future you can just have the single sign-on on your Web2 website. And with EtherMail, you can run advertisement with us. We bring you users. You have single sign with EtherMail, you sign in and you're directly in without huge registration. It's like Gmail, right? It's like a Gmail login, essentially. That's exactly what we're trying to replicate for the Web3 world. And that's where our focus is.
Just to bring you back to what you said a bit earlier, you said Gmail reads your emails, and I wasn't aware of it. So could you just tell me a bit more about it? Do they collect just the metadata? Because I think there are certain personal data that's required for you to set up a Gmail account. I'm not 100% sure whether they ask for your address, but they definitely ask for your first, last name, email, phone number. So I'm just wondering, like, how much information do they have for every single one of us? And what if they just go crazy tomorrow and say, like, I want to gather all this information? Do they have all the communication that I've been conducting with my friends? And I don't message my friends, honestly, but you get where I'm going with it.
Sure. So I don't know, of course, anything in detail about Google. I guess what's publicly available, essentially. But my understanding is, that's a personal opinion, and that's, I think, what probably is true, is they have access to all your data, full stop. And they can do whatever they want to, because I can ask them also for all my data, right? I can ask Google and say, give me all my data, and they're going to get gigabytes of space of the data they've collected about me. I can do the same with Facebook, by the way, right? So yeah, it's a huge amount, of course, of data what they're collecting. So, and that is their business model. It's normal, right? You see, I don't have anything really. Let me put it this way: there is a logic of collecting data, right? Because if you want to target me or in a certain way, give me something relevant, you have to know something about me, because otherwise, I'm gonna get bullshit. So that is in a certain way okay. You see, the thing is, and that's the paradigm shift. Also, what we're trying to do is, all what I'm getting in brackets is I get a free tool. Okay, so you could argue, okay, fine, you get a free tool, that's nice, but to be honest, I believe I deserve more than a free tool. so if I look at the advertisement revenues, what these guys are doing, I believe it should be shared with the users, because they do it on the back of our mind, basically on the back of on the top of our back, well, anyways, on our back. And that's exactly what we as EtherMail, of course, do, right? So we go exactly the opposite way. We are saying, well, we get $10,000 from an advertiser, we take $5,000 and give it to the user in the form of the email token, and then 5,000 we keep as a fee, basically, for us for the service, essentially. And I believe that's how it should be in the future, that there is a shared profit between the platform and the users, because without the users, there's no platform. Without the platform, there's no users. And that's exactly also what we have. So in our case, we have EMCs. So if we repeat the EMCs, we're now in that next step, actually, where people will be able very soon to convert the EMCs into EMTs, the EtherMail coin into the EtherMail token. And then actually it's a publicly traded token. And then again, we are a constant buyer in the market, right? Because every time we get money from an advertiser, we take 50% and buy back token from the market, which is a very big difference to all tokenomics, probably most of the tokenomics, because we essentially generate demand for the token by selling advertisement to the companies, and they basically use 50% to buy the token. We do it for them, but they do it essentially.
Yeah. We quickly jump to the conversation about the token. I like that. So I know that you also gave the early adopters the opportunity to buy the token at a discounted price with like 12% linear vesting and no cliff period, which was amazing because I initially was thinking that, hey, projects need to give early adopters the opportunity to buy, not just reach out to VCs. So I like that about you. There was some backlash on X about the entire situation around the token. So could you just explain that to me? Because I know that once you create an account with you, you get tokens, and you've promised the community that these tokens will be converted to EMT, but it hasn't happened yet. So many people are asking, like, when would that happen? So and a lot of people are unhappy, in my opinion. I might be wrong, but what I've observed in the last few days while researching for this interview. So how do you reply to it?
Yeah. So couple of topics, a couple of things on this one. So number one is we have always said that the EMC will be converted into the EMT, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Okay. So then the question, of course, is when is the right moment in time to actually do it? And we basically said it's very simple. Our logic is we give advertiser money into a bucket, and that bucket basically has a bucket of EMTs at the end, basically. Okay. And every pool is a pool which basically sits on its own, let's say. So the first pool is pool zero, essentially. Okay. And the pool zero conversion has not happened because we simply have to actually get now all the people who actually got EMC in pool zero verified in order to see who is eligible. Because the problem in this world is that there's a lot of people who are trying to skim the system. And that's unfortunate truth. So literally, we had well above 25 million registered wallets in our community, basically, and 80% or something like this or more were actually just scammers. People creating bots and trading and then basically just skimming the EMC and so on. So, and that is super unfair because you see, our problem, our challenge is this. We have a pool, okay? And the pool, let's say the pool is 100, okay, of EMT. So if the pool is 100 EMTs, and then there is EMCs which convert EMC into EMT, there is a conversion mechanism eventually between EMT and EMT. Let's say there is 10,000, let's say there's 1,000 EMC, and let's say there's 100 EMT. Okay? Then the conversion is 10 to 1. Now the problem, of course, is if these 1,000 EMT were actually 900 were actually won by bots and scammers, only 100 are relevant for real people. So the real people are actually getting a big slap in the face that actually the scammers are taking their money. So we have worked very, very, very hard actually in order to ensure that the people who are really doing something and who deserve the token can get the token. Because we don't want that the people eventually get the 900, the scammers basically, and then the real people don't get it. Now that is always a challenge, right? To actually communicate and then the people understand, don't understand. And the unfortunate truth is also, of course, the people who have 900, they are the ones who are shouting loudest, right? Because they of course think, I'm smart. I was able to skim the system basically. And that's exactly how I'm going to do it now. I'm not saying that they're all right. I think there's a lot of very legible people out there who deserve the token. They will get the token and so on. But very often we have seen also that the people who are trying to skim the system have been super aggressive and basically, I want to get this now and so on. So we want to make sure that the people who actually have really done the work and have done things properly get the token. And this is the process what we're going to start now very soon, where we essentially have step number one is a verification process. So depending on the range you're in, so you have a lot of EMC, you have middle EMC, you have low EMC, you have to do different verifications, for example. And then based on this, we'll make a stop and say, okay, now verification ends. And now only these people who are verified, where we know that they are not scammers, they actually will eventually get a conversion into the EMT. And of course, people have been asking us, yeah, but what's the conversion rate and so on? The truth is, I don't know, because I don't know how many EMC are eligible. Because is it 1,000 eventually, or is it 100? I don't know. So we have communicated these things in the white paper. We've communicated this on X. We've communicated this in Q&A, AMAs, and so on. But it is, the attention span sometimes is not very long. So it is a complex system. We understand this. So our objective is now, we're going to do as a next step verification process. We're going to give the people the EMT, and then basically pool 0 is closed, pool 1 starts, and then pool 2 starts, and pool 3 starts.
Yeah.
And we are just going to exactly fulfill our promise, what we have done in the past, and we will exactly continue that path. And
just to push back on this a little bit.
Yes.
A lot of people may argue that you should have done the verification process before announcing the token, because they have joined the community because they were hoping that they will get rewarded based on the task that they completed. And it was just, you have to connect a second wallet, and then you need to collect your first wallet. If you just use the app every day, you get 200 EMC.
Yes.
And many people have been doing this over a considerable period of time, hoping that once you launch the token, they'll get the token or the conversion of it. Yes. So I guess that's one of the reasons that people are annoyed. And I was just wondering what's your reply to it?
I get that, and that's something you never know what's right or what's wrong, right? So number one is we want to make sure that everybody understands that people will get their token, full stop. So we deliver on our promise. We never said that we're going to do the conversion before the TGE basically, and eventually was it the right thing or not? We don't know, to be honest. But there is one element, and I think it's important to understand it also, is let's assume that we played this through, right? So we played it through and said, okay, fine. So we give other people the token. So what are they going to do on day one? They just dump the token, right? So they just get it, and they dump it, and then the price does this. Okay. To whom did we help? Nobody, because eventually the people are just actually selling into the market. The price goes like this, and then actually people are even more disappointed because they thought, oh wait, I thought it would go up, but I'm dumping the token now, and I don't get the money, and so on. So then you have even more negative incentive. So our view is a little bit this. We look at this as a longer term project in view. And I know this is not very popular in Web3 because people want to get rich fast.
2 weeks is long in the
exactly. I get that, but the truth is this. And you've said it before, on 100 people, only 1 or 2 will get rich fast. 98 will be the ones who pay for the 1 or 2 who actually are getting rich fast. So, and people very often forget this, right? I got this email from a friend the other day. I said, man, it's tough to become a millionaire. I said, yeah, it is tough, because it is tough to become a millionaire. Otherwise, everybody would be a millionaire. And of course, everybody's only seeing all those people who are basically posting, yeah, I'm a millionaire on paper. They're all millionaires on papers, right? You have nothing until you were able to withdraw the money and you basically really have something like real world assets. You're not a millionaire. You're nothing. So we look at it as we want to build a business. I know it's sometimes unpopular, but long term, I know it's going to work, because it is a logic where continuously advertisers spend money, people get money, and the system goes and flows and continues to go. And you might believe it or you don't believe it. If you don't believe it, well, perhaps then that's not your project, and then you just dump the token and you move to the next one. If you say, well, I believe in this project and I believe in it long term, it doesn't matter if the token is now here or here or here, because I always say, look at the Amazon price, okay? When it launched, it was, I think, compared to today with stock splits and so on, was like 15 or 16 cents or something like this. It took Amazon 6 years to get to $1 or $1.50 or something like this. And then it took Amazon another 15 or 20 years to get to $200. So that's where you make money long term. And you can always be lucky in between that you make a little bit of money and so on. But businesses are built over a long period of time, and they are successful over a long period of time. And that's what we are trying to do in order to really build a business which has real value and not skim people fast and then just move ahead and whatever. We haven't sold a single token, by the way. So us as founders, we haven't sold a single token. And by the way, that's exactly why we, as founders and investors, have put to ourselves a very long-term vesting, meaning that it's milestone-based, that we can't, because the whole system only works.
Are you comfortable disclosing the vesting period?
Of course, yeah, it's public, of course. So the first 10% is actually vesting on TGE +3, but we've already said nobody's going to sell, because why would we want to sell at the moment? And then the next 90% is actually going over 90 milestones based on users. So up to 21 million users. And this is active users, meaning with transactions in their wallet, basically. And only then actually, we actually get treasury, let's say, or the token vests. Otherwise, there is no token available, because you see, it's very simple. The system doesn't need token if there's no users. It only needs token if there's users.
Yeah, so I was going to ask about the utility of the token. Could you explain to me how exactly it works? And I know that you'll be giving 50% back to the users. And I believe that's the main function of the token. So you'll be able to distribute this. So there are two questions there, actually. The first one is, what if you sell the company or something goes wrong and you decide to stop sharing this 50%? Do people have some kind of protection? Because that's the problem with centralized power, that you seem like a reasonable person and you want the community to benefit from it.
Yeah.
But I don't know what will happen in 5 years. You might want to sell the company and spend the rest of your time with your family. And that's a reasonable, it's a reasonable ask. But at the same time, as an investor and as a part of the community, I want to invest in companies that guarantee that this 50% will remain over time. So that's the first thing. Yeah, I'll let you answer that before I ask my second question.
So first good news is I've sold already businesses, and I've spent considerable time with my family. I could do it tomorrow if I wanted to. So I chose not to, because I really love what I'm doing. I think it's super exciting to be in this field and be able to actually shape again in Web3. I've done it in Web 1 and Web 2 and in Web 3 actually something. That's number one. Number two, to be honest, I rather want to buy than be bought by somebody, because anyways, you see, the problem is this: the moment you sell a business, what do you do with the money again? Well, you have to reinvest it, or you build a new business. So if you have a great business, it's actually much better to just build it, basically. And continue building it. So that's exactly what our philosophy is. But I get what, of course, you're driving at. You never know what happens. The truth is, you never know what happens. That is the sad truth. There's two answers to it. Number one is, the moment you change the system and there's no longer basically a real logic of how it would work, then of course people would just dump the token and would stop reading emails, right? So the buyer basically has a essentially business which doesn't work anymore. So why should they buy this? If you have a business that actually is working, then you should continue doing this and not try to change the system and then all of a sudden that whole system doesn't work anymore. So I'm not super afraid of this. But eventually, I think. Oh wait, there's a guy trying to call me. Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah. So on the phone always. So I'm not super afraid of this, because again, if you look at it long term, it will only work if people essentially are getting value. Otherwise, there's no business, and then they've bought something which is going to be dead.
Yeah. I guess it's a problem that you don't need to tackle right now, but
there's an important element to it. I'm sorry, I was momentarily distracted by that call. So of course, eventually this will be put into a smart contract, right? So it will not be something which is continuously manually done by us. No, the future, at the moment, it's a manual process, let's say, right? Because we are still building and so on. How will it be in the future? Well, it will be online real-time bidding. Companies will essentially buy marketing campaigns. That 50% of the money will automatically buy back EMT from the market. It will be deposited in the smart contract. Once the pool is over, people will get distributed the EMTs. So this will all be in a smart contract. and we actually, as a business or as owners, will have nothing to say in this anymore. So that's the real answer to your question.
Yeah, I was hoping for something like
finance.
that, because yeah, eventually you'll have to put in a smart contract or ensure that it's through a smart contract to yeah, just to ensure that people get their 50%. Because as I said, like,
Of course.
you might change your mind, then you won't cut 20% or 10%, but you cut 0.2% today, and over time you will accumulate 10%. But yeah,
I get it. No, I get it fully. Sorry, it was the guy. I was momentarily just distracted, but that is the real answer, right? Because eventually it has to work without us, and it's just a smart contract. You see, let's look at the future, right? In the future, potentially, actually, it will actually again be bidding systems. It will be an AI potentially saying, okay, I want to spend that money, and then it's going to be an automatic distribution of the funds, basically. So it has to be automated. That's exactly what blockchain is for. And smart contracts are for, is that you can't skim the system. It is a fact. You do this, and it's in the smart contract, and that's it. And I guess also, you see, the perfect thing, of course, would have been for us that we would have had the smart contract already prior to the launch, and everything would have been built, right? And all the users already get the token and so on. But eventually, building a business is a lot of work, and you're building essentially a marketing platform. You're building a Web3 email inbox. Basically, we're building a B2B tool. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. You can't even imagine the amount of things we have to do as a small team, essentially. And eventually boils down to, okay, what do you do when? With what can you live today? What can you do tomorrow? And what are you going to do long term?
I have a few more questions about the EtherMail itself. So while I was prepping for the interview, I found a few comments that the user experience is not the best. And I was a bit skeptical, but after I started setting up my own account, I kind of see where these comments come from. Because, for example, once I open it on my laptop and I want to send an email, it doesn't give me like the option to do it in like this small window. It just opens a entirely new page. And in comparison, that's just crossed my mind right now, but in comparison to Gmail, it feels like less user friendly, and it's simple. It's not necessarily that it's complicated, but it's probably something that I'm used to as Gmail to be very efficient on many levels. So is that something that you have heard from users and you're considering, or is it just me and a few other people, which could also be the case?
So for sure, there is a lot of room for improvement still, right? And there's different buckets on what we have to develop. So just for reference again, we're developing a B2B mailing solution. We're building an advertisement solution. We're building a Web3 email, and we're building an app. So we're building 4 products at the same time. And each of those products is a company, you could argue, in its own. Yeah? So Gmail is Gmail, MailChimp is MailChimp, advertisement platform is Google Ads, for example. So all these things are a lot of work in order to get there. We can definitely hear the people. We are not there where we want to be. To be fair, there's 2 answers to this one on the short term. Number one is we want people to download the app, because that's where we want people to use the app. And it's specifically once we have also signing with EtherMail as a wallet, for example, that will make your whole experience of Web3 a lot easier, because essentially that's your passport in order to actually get access to Web3 projects and so on. And then everything is happening basically in the app. And we have 100,000 plus downloads already. And I think we have some very good reviews on the app. So we really want to bring people towards the app. That's number one. And then the other one really is, don't forget the email. Let me ask you something. What's your assumption? On 100 emails you send and receive, what's the split between the emails you have sent and the emails you have received?
Oh, it's a good one. So my private account or my company account?
Company account.
Company account. Okay, so the number will definitely be higher on the ones that I send. Probably around 20% send. It's like 15 to 20% send, 80% receive.
And
on
personal?
a weekly basis.
And personal?
Oh, it's much lower. 5%, 5% send, and 95% receive.
There you go. There you go, Ivan. And that's a little bit the answer also. Email is not necessarily a C2C communication channel where we as users send a lot of emails to friends and so on. It is really a B2C, a company to user communication channel. And every company on earth is using email, full stop. Because it's the communication channel which has been adopted by everybody. And that's why nobody's going to change it very fast, because they all adopted it basically. But for me to you, why should I now send a complicated email? It's much faster to send you a WhatsApp or a Telegram or whatever. And we would never try to replace this. So again, it's a question of which communication mechanism for which communication. So our focus is B2C communication. So my focus is not necessarily that we are the best Gmail provider where you can then send to your friends emails. That's not my objective necessarily. You can continue to use Gmail basically. My objective is that all the communication, what you in the future hopefully get for companies, comes through EtherMail. That would be my dream, because then I know that we are your, let's say, inbox for your transactions, for your bills, for whatever you want to have basically in here. Well, you could even say your business and purchasing email thing, right? So, because that would be the perfect thing, because that's exactly what we want to do. B2C communication. C2C, yeah, we can do it, and that's fine, but it's really B2C.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying that. It makes a lot more sense to me now of why it is what it is. And I actually tried to send an email to myself, but I couldn't do it. It said like, even though your account is verified, you can't initiate conversations. I was like, what the hell? What's the use of this if I can't send emails? But
because it's receiving emails. And that's, as you said already before, it's 95% of the time it's you receive an email. You don't send an email.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for clarifying that.
So our focus actually will be if we there's 24 hours in the day, right? So we're gonna spend probably 21 hours on the receiving part and 3 hours on the sending part. I'm not saying that we're not gonna do it, and there's room for improvement and we'll do it. But you see, for us, it's more relevant is, do you get the right emails? To whom do you allow that they send you emails? Are you going to get rewarded for the emails? How can we improve the purchasing process, for example? So there's a lot of stuff, essentially, what is for you relevant as a receiver of the email. The sender is small.
Amazing. Could you just quickly explain to me how exactly does it work? So, because I've done it myself, but I don't think that I've shared any personal information enough for you to know what type of consumer I am. So I'm just wondering, how would you gather all this information about me?
Yeah, so there's different layers, and again, you have to think these things in different steps. Networks don't evolve overnight; they evolve over a long period of time, and then they are unstoppable. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're building a network, right? A network of communication, essentially. So at the moment, we are at the lowest level of information what we have. Essentially, what you have provided yourself, of course, with your IP address. If you've used not a VPN or something, I guess we would know in which country you would probably be at. And then there is voluntarily, you can choose to share information. You get EMC for it. In the onboarding process, you ask certain profiles, what you like, and so on. So these are the three things. And then, of course, eventually there's two other things which automatically will come into play. And the first question is, which type of user are you, and are you willing to accept commercial emails, yes or no? Let's assume you are, okay? By doing this, you're essentially saying, well, I'm fine to actually share a certain amount of information. There's two buckets, let's say, of information we're going to share. Number one is your wallet, right? So what's in your wallet, of course, gives you information about who you are. And then you might have signed up with a cold wallet or not your real wallet or whatever. That's a choice you have. Again, I have, for example, I have a business wallet, and I have a personal wallet, and then I have an asset wallet. Okay, so these are three different wallets I would basically have. But I have 3 EtherMail accounts, by the way, also, right? So, and I get different emails in all 3 different accounts, because depending on the wallet information, I actually get A, B, or C basically. because the wallet information I provided. They don't know my name or anything because I chose not to do it, for example. So it's a conscious choice to say I want A, B, C, D, or A. And then the next one, of course, is a self-learning system, which, of course, the more you interact with the email, the more it learns about you. So if we have sent you an email for a, I don't know, a newsletter service, and you didn't even open the email, well, we know you didn't open the email. Apparently, you weren't interested. Okay, so we're not going to send you that same email again because we know you're not interested in newsletters, for example. Or we have sent you, I don't know, a hardware wallet or something, and you clicked on it. Well, then we know, oh, okay, Ivan is interested in actually hardware wallets. Oh, perhaps he must then think about asset storage and so on. Oh, perhaps then he's interested in something else. So you can, of course, with AI, and it's a very happy focus of ours also, step by step generate information about the person, what that person is. And again, you can choose whatever you want to. If you then at one stage say, I don't want to receive any more emails. So it's a filter, right? And it's a very different filter, by the way, compared to what Gmail is doing. In Gmail, I can say, I don't want to receive any more advertisement emails. On our end, you can. I can say, I only want to receive emails, for example, from the token NFTs I hold. That's the only people who are allowed to send me emails. But I can also say, I want to also open it up to other brands and to Web3 brands or Web2 brands. And so it's a choice, basically, I have. That's exactly what we believe. We believe you as a user and consumer should have the choice who is allowed to send you emails, and not the provider. The provider should not have that authority to define who's allowed to send you an email or not. It's you who have to define it.
Okay, and based on the choices that I make, I get rewards. So if I get as many ads as possible, then I'll get the higher reward at the end of the month.
Exactly, 100%, exactly. And again, we are in stage one, right? So at the moment, everybody gets the same reward, essentially. Everybody gets whatever, 5 ENC or 10 or whatever, it basically depends. You basically get it. And then again, every pool is split amongst the people who in this pool, in that period of time, received and read emails, basically. And then the next pool comes. That's very important because it's money we receive and we just give it back to the people, basically. And then the second part is basically, over time, of course, we are going to have individual allocation of rewards. So that means that you as a user are going to get something very different than the next user. Because if you are a very good buyer and you're purchasing and so on, and you're converting very well, you're getting a lot more rewards than somebody who's just opening an email and never does anything.
And why, if I want to opt out, do I have the option for you to delete all the data that you've collected about me? Because let's say I guess you know what I mean. So is that
possible? Sure, of course. I mean, eventually you could say as a user, okay, please delete all my data. And then we would have to do it. I mean, there's GDPR rules. It's a typical rule, basically, where you have to, as a provider of services, you as a user, you can tell me delete my data, and we have to do it. Full stop.
And is that the same with Google? Could I just reach out to them and say, like, delete all the data that you have about me?
Yes, you can, definitely. It's your data. It's not my data.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Like, drafting an email for Google.
Yes. But then they probably will say, sorry, then you can't use my service anymore.
Oh, yeah, that's so true. I mean,
they might.
You have one really interesting feature called TX-ray feature. So my understanding of it is that it would scan a smart contract and explain it to you, and it will send it to your email. So you have it in your email, which is a bit risky in my opinion, because if someone finds your passport or your password, then you're in trouble. But that's an interesting feature probably for people that are transitioning from Web 2 to Web 3, because it's I consider myself a Web 3 native and I have a good understanding of it. So I won't be very useful to me. But you define yourself as this Web 2.5.
Yes.
So could you tell me a bit more about it, how it works and the rationale behind it?
Yeah, it comes exactly as you said. All of the need that people need an easy way in order to get access to the Web3 world. We discussed it briefly before. So me as a Web2 user, I installed something in my Chrome extension. I get this pop-up thing of cryptic 001s. I don't know actually where I've stored the email. I don't know when I actually bought the NFT and all this information. So, but for me as a user, if I buy something today at Amazon or wherever, I get an email, right? I store the email. I know what I bought. I know basically the price, I know the date, and I have a reference basically. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're just replicating what is normal in Web 2. We're giving you an email, a receipt, you could argue, with the advantage that actually the receipt also scans the contract and ensures that you're not part of a scam or that you basically somebody is trying to draw funds from your wallet or something. Because I mean, it happened to me, right? I mean, you sign sometimes something and you don't even know, or somebody drops something in your wallet. You think, "Oh, what's this now?" Yeah, I don't even understand what they're dropping in my wallet. How could that be? I mean, I remember years back when I started, I was like, "What do you mean they can just drop stuff in my wallet? It's crazy." Yeah, but that's true. So then again, it's okay. If basically I haven't signed something, I don't have a receipt in the email. Basically, it wouldn't even show. Right, so we're trying to make it easy for the Web 2.
And would it flag it as a scam? Because in my cold wallet, I would receive multiple NFTs or things that if I click on them, they'll drain my entire cold wallet. So would this feature scan it? Would this feature flag it as this is a scam? Don't touch it. Be careful, or just at least like be aware of it.
So there's different layers, let's say. So layer number one is it's normally specifically designed for you. You let's say go on OpenSea and you say I want to buy an NFT, and then I buy the NFT, and then it arrives as an email in my inbox, and then in the inbox I basically sign.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I got it.
So then I sign the transaction in the inbox and I say this is me now. Yeah? So what I think you are saying is I think it's an interesting feature, but that's not what's covered with this. Well, of course you could say, well, if I don't have an email received for this thing in the transaction in my wallet, which I in the future will see also in EtherMail, then okay, EtherMail didn't check it, and that means it could be a scam. So we could flag it as not verified by EtherMail.
Yeah. Nice.
It's a feature we don't have yet, but I think it's an interesting idea.
Okay, you should pay me for it.
Yeah.
But like coming up with ideas for you. No, I'm just joking.
Oh, good. Hey, we're always open for new ideas. But then somebody needs to pay us for it also.
Yeah, exactly.
That's always the disadvantage, right? So somebody needs to pay us.
So true. Could you just tell me a bit more about your partnership with BNB? Because you announced it yesterday. And one of the reasons that I'm wearing my Polygon t-shirt is because they're also one of your partners.
Yes.
So yeah, could you tell me a bit more about it, and in what capacity do you collaborate with them?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, we are an EVM compatible player. So that's our focus, right? We are in the EVM ecosystem for the moment. It doesn't mean that we rule out that we're going to go in the Solana system, for example. But for the moment, we are in the EVM compatible system. That means that step by step, we'll look at all the layer ones and layer twos basically in order to make sure that we are compatible and that we are integratable and that we can actually switch between wallets, for example, in the EtherMail. So you can switch between the Ethereum wallet, you can switch to the BNB wallet and so on. So it's really also around the wallet functionality and that you can sign transactions that you receive it. So we're trying to be within the ecosystem of EVM compatible with all the chains essentially, not only with mainnet. And that's exactly what we're doing. That's what we have been doing with BNB chain now, and we'll do with all the other chains also.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. It was such a pleasure talking to you and learning more about EtherMail.
EtherMail, by the way, it's important. EtherMail.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I keep calling it ETH. I'm so sorry, EtherMail.
No worries.
And yeah, we should definitely catch up again and talk about it in a year or so and see how much progress you've made.
Oh, definitely, Ivan. Thanks a lot for your time and great questions. And I see you've done a lot of research, which I love, because that makes actually good questions. So it's an interesting conversation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I got everything right apart from the name. So,
Yeah, no worries.
thank
It's
you.
played a couple of times more. So EtherMail, so people remember it. You need several contacts to convert a customer. So
exactly. Thank you so much again.
thank you, Eva. Bye bye.
I'll stop recording.